month it was in. Welcome to our February webinar. Today we're going to be looking at blogging for social media. So we're going to get kicked off in 2 moments, just waiting for a couple more attendees. I'll give you a moment as well just to adjust your sound, etc. Because obviously we want you, whether you're sitting there on your lunch break or if you're over in New Zealand, it's the afternoon, or in the morning in WA, we want to make sure that you can hear the broadcast nice and clearly. So I should introduce myself first. My name is Gareth. I'm the training consultant here at Isentia 2 Social. So I'm the one that runs all these wonderful webinars as well as the training courses, etc. And so I'm going to take you through the course content today. So what are we going to cover? Well, obviously it's all about blogging for social media today. So it's going to be, first off, we're going to look at why blog. Why is it important to blog, or why should we have a blog and put effort into it? Now I'm going to give you guys 3 tips for blogging. So the real meat of today, what is it that makes a good blog for social? How can we do that? How can we execute it? And make sure that people are actually reading our content and taking the information away. And then finally, we're just going to have a little quick look at posting. So obviously we've got this content. We want to put it out on social channels. So which social channel is the best for it, etc. We'll take a look at that. Now a little bit of housekeeping. So we'll go for about half an hour today. So we'll take about half an hour to get through the content. Feel free to throw us questions as we go through the chat menu, as well as via the hashtag. So hashtag Isentia courses. And at the end, we'll have a bit of time for some questions. So we'll jump to those questions at the end. Now we will also be recording the webinar, so we will be distributing that later on as via an email. So you can watch it time and time again and enjoy my dulcet tones as much as you feel you want to. So we'll jump straight into the content, guys. So let's talk about why blog. So why is it that we're here today? Why is it we're having a chat? For those of you who have attended my courses before, or how to jump onto one of the webinars, or even listen to anything that we've been saying here at Isentia 2 Social, you know that we do think video is a highly important medium, but obviously blogs just as important. Well, not just as important. It's a very important medium in the fact that we can get some written content out there, and I'll talk about the 3 reasons why blogging can be great for an organisation. That being said, it isn't the be-all and end-all. Like I mentioned, we do want to make sure that you've got a nice content mix, whether it's video, whether it's imagery, etc. As we go through, though, like I mentioned, feel free to throw any questions around. So the 3 reasons that we talk about when it comes to blogging is, first off, it's easy to create. Now, for those of you who are just starting blogging, you're going to have a little bit of a challenge at the beginning, and the reason for that is, it takes a little bit of time to find your feed, to really get your voice and get your fluidity when it comes to writing your blogs. But as you begin to build up that content engine, as we call it, so the who, the what, the when, because it won't just be yourself, it'll be subject matter experts within your organisation, etc. But as you begin to find your feet in blogging, it becomes very easy to create. You begin to see opportunities for content everywhere, and there'll be a lot more fluidity to your creation of your blogs. Obviously, cost-effective is a big reason why organisations blog. Compared to video and images and podcasts, it's a very cost-effective medium. Pretty much, you've got your PC, you've got the blog, whether it's WordPress, whether you're putting it out elsewhere. Very cost-effective means of content. And obviously easily consumed. People can read wherever they've got their mobile devices, when they're on their PC, whatever the case is. People commuting in the morning, checking out a little bit of long-form content. It is a very easily consumed piece of content. So they're the 3 reasons. Obviously, for outside of social media, we might think of things like SEO, so search engine optimization, might help our website continually get a bit more traffic, etc. But these are the 3 main reasons of why we'd blog on social media. That being said, let's jump straight into the 3 tips and the 3 ways to really make your blogs sing for social media. So the first thing I want to talk about is get them in. Obviously, you've gone to a bit of effort. You want to make sure that your audience is coming in and reading what you have to say. So how do you get them to read your content? So Copyblogger has a little bit of an interesting stat, and they say that when served long-form content, 8 out of 10 people will see your headline. So we're talking about your headline here, so whatever the case may be, whether it's a nice quirky pun or whether it's a straight to the point headline to talk about what your article involves, 8 out of 10 people will read it, but only 2 out of 10 will actually click through. So what does that tell us? What's a challenge? Obviously, it means that we have to have a really good headline. And I know that's stating the obvious, but it has to be compelling. It has to not only say something about what we want to talk about, but really compel them to want to click in. Now, there is a challenge in that. Well, there's 2 real challenges. Now, the first one is obviously anyone who's been creating a blog for the purpose of SEO content. So you're trying to get your page to pop up at the top of the Google results. You know, we're thinking about keywords. We're trying to get sometimes those long tail keywords stuffed into that headline. But that may affect the creativity of it. It may affect the way it reads or the excitement of the reason someone would click on your article. So you really got to strike that balance between getting some SEO content in, some keywords, etc., but still make it nice and creative. Don't forget, we're talking about here blogging for social. So, you know, throwing up an article on social, people won't want to see a headline that is stuffed with keywords. They want to see something that's compelling and would cause them to click through. Now, the other big challenge that we have is some recent changes to Facebook's algorithm. So we've always heard about that wonderful algorithm. Well, there's a new term called clickbait, and some of us may have heard of this this phenomenon recently. And so what is clickbait? Well, clickbait is those articles that are posted on social media solely to get people to click on it. You know, as it sounds, it's baiting people just to click on it. So get those metrics up, get people visiting a web page. So they may come in the form of those listicles, you know, those list articles that have you know, the 27 reasons that a training consultant may want to read this article, or maybe it's just useless content, or maybe it's even misleading. So it may have a really amazing headline. People click on it, go through the blog or the piece of content, and it's worthless. It's not actually what it says it is. So what Facebook is doing, they're trying to cut down on clickbait. So they're actually punishing pages that put out that. Effectively, what Facebook wants is that you put out content that people click on, read, and actually spend a bit of time engaged with that content. Because let's not forget, Facebook wants users to spend more time looking for content on Facebook. So what we want to make sure is that, you know, when we are putting out our blogs onto Facebook, for starters, they're good, but also the headline, the heading that we've got, actually is representative of what we are putting out there. So that when people click through, they don't bounce straight back, etc. What we call a grab. We want to put a grab into there. So something that really sort of attracts people in that first. Keep the audience reading past that first paragraph. So what do I mean by a grab? Well, it's not limited to these, but here are 5 examples of a grab that you can include in that first paragraph to, like I mentioned, really keep your audience engaged with your content. So maybe an anecdote, so a little personal story that sort of ties into the theme or the content of your blog. A relevant quote. So quotes are quite good if it's theatrical, if it has some relevance to what you're about to talk about. A thought-provoking question, always really great at the beginning of a blog, something that sort of gets your audience going, I wonder, you know, yes, I've actually thought about that. I've often thought what makes a phenomenal blog. And it gets them thinking and will create them to read through further on. Perhaps a compelling statistic, so a statistic about why they should blog, etc., or something that really sort of binds them into your content. Or an interesting comparison between 2 topics, 3 topics, whatever the case is, something that compares some concepts to really create some compelling reason for your audience to continue to read on. So I'll give you guys an example about what I mean here. So if I was to write a blog about blogging, yes, I completely understand the irony there. So if I was to write a blog about a blogging article, maybe my anecdote at the beginning might be something along the lines of, the first time I started blogging, Or it may be a quote, and so I might say something along the lines of, you know, it was John Smith who first said, I think, therefore I blog. Perhaps it's a thought-provoking question. Remember the first time you read a blog? What was it? Get the audience beginning to think about what made them read a blog or what it was that sort of drove them towards it. Perhaps a stat. 43% of bloggers go on to lead kick-ass lives. Or maybe a comparison. So blogs and traditional may seem similar, but there are key differences. So depending on what your content is, try to utilize either an anecdote, quote, question, stat, or comparison to really get your audience to see the value of your blog from the get-go. It really helps. I'm a big fan of anecdotes personally because I find that storytelling is such a great part of content, especially for social. Tell a story, get your audience engaged. So guys, that's to get them in. So you get them in with a really great headline and a fantastic graph, but obviously you want to keep them happy. You want to keep them reading through your content. So how do we do that? How do we keep our audience engaged from the headline, the grab, right through to our final conclusion? So one thing we want to do is we'll make sure it's visual. We often talk about the visual aspects of social media, and everyone knows, you know, we throw up images, we throw up videos. We want to make sure that we don't ignore those great lessons that we learn from social when creating our blog content for social. So I guess the first example that I want to give is when it comes to your text, mix up your text as you go through. So use bold for your headers and your key messages. Use italics to emphasize a tone, you know, whether it's a quote or whether it's a little bit of a quirkiness to it. And a lot of WordPress, or even, as you can see, the screenshot from my LinkedIn blogging tool, you drop in a block quote to emphasize those key points. So if you have a really key point, use those block quotes because that will really help your audience. It breaks up the monotony of just the standardized text and really makes that piece of messaging stick out to them. So I definitely encourage you to mix up your text as you go through your blog to make sure that you're taking those key points and you're emphasizing those major aspects to it. But beyond that, I think one of the most important things is thinking visual. Like I mentioned, we think visual when it comes to social. Don't forget that when it gets to your blogs. There's a fairly openly accepted stat that we interpret images 60,000 times faster than written text. And one of the main reasons for that is you look back to civilizations past, hieroglyphics, etc. We use images to communicate, and 90% of our memory is based on images. So let's use them. Let's make sure we use images to get our key message across and keep our audience engaged with the blog content. I know we say blogging, we automatically think text, but images are so important. So whether it is a relevant image that you pop next to your key points, a video. If you have video content that you've been using on social, rip that in there if it's relevant. And any graphs. So we talk about infographics a lot, and a lot of the clients we talk to love infographics from a consumption point of view, so throw those pieces in there. Make sure you mix up the text so that people can really take away those key points when they're reading your message. Now, one thing I also like to do, obviously, I guess I'd call this a form of imagery, is I love using embedded tweets or embedded posts. And so you can do that easily from social. You can grab that HTML code and you can paste that in. And so I love, if I'm talking about something on social media, I can jump into the Twitter, I can jump into Facebook, I can find a post or a tweet on that topic, embed it across, and like I said, it breaks it up. So there's a snippet from an article I read about Dan the Man, the Optus community manager. And so what did I do? I went and grabbed a Facebook post about Dan the Man that was relevant to what I was talking about. So think about the different visual assets you can use in your blog to help drive your message. I think the most important part, and yes, I do love this image, most important part is don't make your audience become treasure hunters, trying to absolutely drain through all the content you've got there to take away that information. Make sure they're kept happy. Make sure you're giving them that information as you go through. Now the final tip, leave knowing. Okay, and what this is about is you want your audience to take away those key messages we've talked about. How are we going to do that? At the end of the day, you've written this blog for a reason, I hope. We're not just writing blogs for the sake of it and putting out that crap content we talked about that might result in clickbait status from Facebook. We want our audience to take away a message. So how are we going to do that? Well, when it comes to getting ready on for blogging on social, I encourage people to use the rule of three. The rule of three is sort of used across a lot of different mediums, whether it's storytelling, whether it's blogging, video, and we can see that represented in a whole lot of media and stories when it comes to popular culture. Three Little Pigs, Three Wise Men, whatever the case is, the rule of three is a great way to go about structuring your content so that your audience takes in your key messages nice and easily. One of the reasons about that is because you don't want to have your audience having too many key messages. if you can bundle them up into 3 messages, then there's a much higher chance of them actually walking away and going, oh, fantastic, I remember this, this, and this. It's a really powerful thing to do. For example, when we do our digital updates, so when we talk about new things that are happening on social media, we'll give people what it is about, how it's going to affect them, and then how they can then utilize that or get around that from a social media point of view. Maybe it's just 3 tips. Maybe it's 3 reasons. Usage of the number 3 is such a powerful thing to use in social media as well as with your blogging. So when your audience clicks onto your article, your blog, what are the 3 things that they can get out of it? And to that point, when you're constructing your blog, so thinking about you building this blog content, the one thing I always encourage people is to think of first things first. Now what I mean by that is a lot of people will start with a headline. They may start with a headline, or they might start with a quirky grab or quote, whatever the case may be. But effectively, what you want to start with is your thesis, your idea. What is it you want your audience to know about? The next step is build out those main points. So utilize that power of 3 and build out those 3 main points. Now I know what I want to talk about. What are the things that I want my audience to take away from by reading this blog piece? The next thing is doing your intro and conclusion, and obviously that will include that grab there. So once you've got your main idea, your 3, 4, 5 key points, then build in your intro and conclusion. Now I always encourage people blogging for social, do your headline last. Now the reason for that is exactly what we talked about earlier. You want to make sure that people that are clicking on your article, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook, aren't just clicking on it for the sake of it, or they're not just clicking on it because it's got a really compelling headline, but because they're going to click and get some value. So write your headline last. Sorry, goodness me, I almost completely turned that boat around. So write your headline last, so that way you can make sure that your headline speaks to exactly what your blog is about. That way, you're going to get people who are clicking on your piece of content who are actually there to take away that value. We really do encourage people to make sure that they're building great quality content, and so that's all about making sure that it starts with a thesis and then you build out your main points, finish up with that headline. For those of you who joined us on our last webinar, we had my boss Richard Spencer, who came on and talked about his 3 trends for 2016, and he hit the nail on the head. Don't let him know I said that, but he really pinpointed it in saying that this is definitely the year where crap content is going to get penalized. So it's all about making sure that the content we put up on social is phenomenal. Now guys, because I'm such an incredibly nice guy, I'm going to break my rule of 3. I'm actually going to give you guys a 4th bonus tip. Now my bonus tip is all about repurposing. Now, I talked about that content engine. I talked about how difficult sometimes it can be to get blogging at the beginning. You know, I don't have an idea. I don't know what to talk about on social. Yes, my boss may want me to start blogging, but where do I start? What do I start writing about? Well, repurpose. So by repurpose, we mean look at the existing content that you have. So it may be a video, it may be some images, it may be an infographic. Can you then take out some of the key points from that, or can you take out an aspect from that and build a blog around it? It's one of the best things to do. It's one of the things that makes writing blogs a lot easier, because effectively you can look there and you can break down an awesome piece of video content or an awesome infographic into several smaller chunked out blogs, and then you can direct them back to that infographic and create this cyclical effort when it comes to your content strategy. Something that we really talk about, because it'll cut down the effort and all that time sitting around in front of a keyboard going, well, what am I going to write about today? You know, our blog's been a little bit dormant of late, so what can I talk about? So repurposing is an incredibly helpful one. As an example, I'm going to break the 4th wall and jump out of my my presentation for a moment. I've got an article here, and what do you know? Producing social media worthy blogs. I've utilized this webinar to create it's a bit more of a cut down and streamlined article or blog of what we're going through here today. So I've created a blog based on this webinar. So I'm using content we've already created to then create blogs afterwards. So I'd really encourage you, look at what you've already got and repurpose. if you're struggling for ideas as well, maybe look to what similar organizations do, or heaven forbid your competition, but look to what other people are creating content around. Follow other blogs that are have content in the industry. Join groups on LinkedIn and Facebook that talk about similar content. The more you do that, you'll begin to see great blog opportunities. So yes, repurpose, but definitely make sure you've got the ear to the ground to know what sort of content there is is out and around, and that may also reveal what content isn't there, what content you can then create around your for your blog, which is absolutely thought leadership based. And what about posting? I mentioned we're going to talk about posting in this webinar as well. One thing I want you guys all to think about is, so often when we write long-form content, blogs, etc., we tend to just push it out across all of our social networks. And I really discourage that. For the main reason, think about your audience first. Your audience on LinkedIn, on Twitter, are going to be vastly different. So think about what they may get out of it. And you know what? If you've got a blog that's perfect for LinkedIn, it may not work on Twitter, it may not work on Facebook, so don't cross-post. But a couple of tips. Obviously, when we're throwing up our blog on Twitter, make sure that you use a link shortener. So I use Google link shortener personally, just because I've got a Google account. But you could use Bitly or a couple of tiny URL, a whole lot of different ones to shorten that URL. So you may have an incredibly long URL that's all those wonderful / hyphens, etc., to shorten it up to make sure that you're not eating into your 140 character limit too much. If you're posting on Facebook, when you post the link, make sure you can often choose between which image you want to utilize. You can actually upload an additional image if you want. So make sure the image that goes up on Facebook when your blog is being shared, your article is being shared, is relevant, but also it's very striking. Like we said, we all know that imagery is so important when posting on social media, so make sure that's the case. And when it comes to, say, LinkedIn, if you're posting out from a organization page or a business page, you can actually narrow down your audience. You can actually select which audience, by a targeted audience, will see this blog. And so one of the great things about that is if you've got a lot of followers and you don't want people from, say, finance, or you don't want people from marketing to see this blog because it's not going to be relevant to them, you can very much do that. You can minimize it. I personally also like to post my articles on LinkedIn Pulse. I blog a lot around social media, so guys, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn and connect in with me, because I post a lot of Pulse articles. One of the important things about that is when you do post, make sure that you select the right pardon me, make sure you select the right tags down the bottom. So on LinkedIn Pulse you can have up to 3 tags, and what that will do will make sure that content gets served to people who are more likely going to read that particular content. It's all about making sure that you pick the right distribution method for your blog. So personally, I wouldn't put up some of my training content up on the R2 social blog, because we aim that specifically at social media clients. So think about what content you have and where you want to post that. All in all, at the end of the day, guys, make sure that you're feeding your audience with great quality content. And like we said, one of the best ways to do that is through continually putting out great blog content, by creating that content engine and repurposing what you've already got. So guys, that brings us to the end of our webinar today. So like I said, the 3 main tips I'll give you when it comes to creating good blogs is obviously first get them in. Like we said, make sure you do that with a great headline that is relevant to what you are wanting to talk about, and also having a good grab there, having a creative grab that makes people want to read past that first paragraph. The second tip was all about keeping them happy, and that's all visual. Guys, think about mixing up your text, whether it's font sizes, whether it's bold, italics, and block quotes, or making sure we include images and videos, graphs, like I said, video content that you've got, put a lot of effort into, throw that into your blogs because it's going to keep your audience happy. And the final tip was get them to leave knowing. You know, you've written this blog for a reason, so what is it you want them to take out of it? My particular tip around that, using the rule of 3. Here are 3 great reasons, here are 3 great tips, or the who, the what, and the why. Alrighty guys, that brings us to the end of the content for today. So I've got quite a few questions that have begun to come through, both on Twitter and through our chat menu here, so keep them coming as I begin to answer these ones. So the first question, can bloggers use Facebook instant articles? Okay, so with instant articles, for those of us who know, Facebook has introduced instant articles for a couple of media agencies to put in long-form written content on Facebook, so it actually sits on the platform, so it loads quicker, it looks a little bit more slick in that environment. At the moment, they still haven't opened that up to everyone, so there's a couple of news production companies, as well as I believe it's National Geographic. They haven't opened instant articles up to everyone just yet. Watch this space. I don't know if they have plans to. There are the notes section on Facebook, so you can put notes, which, you know, back in the day, when we think about it from personal use, people used to put long diatribes instead of having a status update. But I'd still, at this stage, just encourage sharing across your articles in the form of a post. But if that does change when it comes to instant articles, by all means, follow R2 Social Blog or follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and we'll keep you up to date with if there are any changes on that. Do you have a workflow for beginner bloggers? So providing structure. So yeah, okay. So structure is so important when it comes to getting your blogging going. So what I first think we use is just by an Excel spreadsheet. So what we do is we have a couple of different topics. Okay, so ours include, from a R2 Social point of view, digital updates, includes design, and includes strategy. We have those different categories to start off with. And then we shoot off into subtopics. So we begin to look at what our categories are, and then subtopics. And so that begins to get a little bit of a understanding about what sort of content we're going to write. Because if I was to ask someone within our organisation, say, write an article on social media, they would struggle with that. If I asked them to write an article on Twitter, I begin to get a bit narrow. But still, the more specific you can get, the better. So if I ask someone to write an article on Twitter about the use of hashtags in, say, the medical industry, that specificity, I've just made up a word, that nature of being specific means that I've given someone some boundaries where they can now be creative. So I'd encourage you guys to have a running idea about some really finite blog topics, and then most importantly, use the subject matter experts within your organization. So we have a weekly basis where we allocate weeks to every person within our organization to write blogs, and that sort of keeps that content engine going. Next question is, do you recommend that blogs have an offer or call to action so that you can track potential customers? So yeah, that's there's nothing wrong with doing that. Obviously, you want to put your call to action in the final paragraph, and so you very much could do that by what I could do. I could even show you guys this. Is that if you want to, you can highlight text, and then you can hyperlink that text. Now, if you do that with a tracking code by using either a bit.ly code or a Google link shortening, you can very much track the people who click on that. Or if you're actually on, pardon me, your own blog, you can track the traffic from your blog through to other sections. So we definitely encourage people where possible to track and measure what matters. And so I'd encourage that if that is part of yours, if you want to track people through the call to action, you most definitely can do that through using a tracking URL and just hyperlink that into the text. But if you do that, make sure that you actually say, click here to get more information on our products, or click here to get more information on our services, or more information on what we want to talk about. Next one is any tips on how to track on offers on how to track blogs? Okay, so I think we just covered that one. A lot of blogs are backlinks in the content of source information. How much research do you need to do, and how accurate you need to be? So, trying to get backlinks. The best way to get backlinks is to create fantastic content that people want to share, and utilize your Google Analytics to see where that traffic is coming from. If you do find that you're getting an awful lot of source referral from a certain website or different pages, then make sure you sort of build that relationship with them. If there's any other questions, feel free to throw them through. FYI, links to Twitter can get capped at a number, so I don't need to carry. Yes, obviously, like I said, be very careful when you're using your link shortener on Twitter to make sure that you're not eating into that character limit, and those different tools such as Google link shortener as well as bit.ly will act as a link tracker to see how many clicks that you get on those certain articles. If you do have a paid for Bitly account as well, you can actually customize that little alphanumeric section at the back of the Bitly link. The one thing I'd do is make sure, just like with a hashtag or anything like that, make sure that if you do use an acronym or you do use a little bit of shortened text, make sure you read it with fresh eyes, just to make sure that it doesn't read anything untoward. I'm sure we've all seen different hashtag fails out there over the years, so just make sure that if you have shortened it up, make sure it still reads well and doesn't say anything inappropriate. So guys, thanks so much for your attendance for our webinar today. Feel free, as I mentioned, to hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter, and more than happy for you guys to reach out to me if you have any questions on blogging. We'll be bringing another webinar to you next month, and for any information on our courses, feel free to hit us up on isentiacourses.com. We have courses on content marketing as well, so very relevant information there. Otherwise, guys, thanks so much for your time, whether you're in WA right through to NZ. Hope you guys took a lot out of today's session, and enjoy your weekend. Take care, guys.